Good afternoon and welcome to Topical Thursday with the League of Women Voters of Toledo-Lucas County. My name is Darcy Yates, and I'm the chairperson of the Topical Thursday and More Committee. For those of you who aren't familiar with the League of Women Voters is a political nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political candidate or political party. We do, however, take stands on issues, select issues, through study. I would also like to welcome not only those of you that are present, but also those of you who are attending via Zoom. We just love technology. And then we would like to thank the Toledo Public Library for making it possible for us to meet, and we are also using their video equipment. So thank you to the Toledo Public Library. I have a couple of announcements. Members, be sure to read the Wednesday update that is emailed to you every 2 weeks. The current one was sent yesterday on the 13th. It has info on our membership meetings and our upcoming meetings. Now, please contact our membership chair, Jane Seeley, or you can call the league number if you're not receiving these. They're very important e-newsletters. We also send or mail hard copies to those members without a computer. Our website is under repair. I mean, those of you that visit our website continuously may have noticed that nothing is changing. And some of the things that you wanted to hear about, you couldn't hear about. So it's good. We're coming up with something that is going to be absolutely wonderful. And but you will need to check your Wednesday updates and our Facebook page for current information. Our next general meeting is this coming Monday, the April 18th, and it's a Zoom only meeting. The topic will be who governs your water, and our guest speaker will be Toledo Councilman Nick Comise. Zoom registration link is on the Wednesday update. Our annual meeting and brunch will be Saturday, May 21st. You want to mark your calendar. Our guest speaker will be Josh Krupp. He is the weekend evening anchor on Channel 13 ABC WTVG. He'll be sharing his insights on Ohio's redistricting process and how he has educated and engaged viewers on redistricting. This event is also open to non-members, so we would like to encourage all of you to invite a friend, and please watch your mail and email for more information. I would now like to turn our meeting over to our co-president, Ann Fabizak Payne, who will be introducing our guest speaker. Darcy.
Hit pin. Thank you, Darcy. Here you are.
Like to click on something. Okay.
In the black screen. Sorry, go up to your version, the one that's got a yellow. Yeah, right in the corner, 3 dots. Drop down to
Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everyone. As Darcy said, our speaker this afternoon is Emily Schriver, and she is a Ohioan. She is the CEO of the Matriots, and in this role, she partners across the state with Ohioans seeking representation. But the Matriots is mostly interested in encouraging women to run for elected office, and they are nonpartisan, but do support candidates. It's different from us. We don't do that. We are nonpartisan and do not support candidates. We do have positions on issues, though. Emily holds a Juris Doctor from Northwestern University School of Law and a BA from the Ohio State University. Most recently, she was an attorney in the Office of Legal Affairs of Ohio State. And I won't take up any more of her time. I'll ask Emily to come to the podium and share the information she's brought with us.
Do you have a PowerPoint presentation, Sue? I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but we can always send it to you after the fact. Here. So hi everyone, I'm Emily. It's nice to see you. Thank you for coming today. Where you mentioned, yes, I was a lawyer before this, but I have 3 daughters who challenge me daily. Today is one of their birthdays. Today she's 12, so I have 12, 10, and 7-year-old. And they make me think about, why do I do what I do? Was I making a difference as an attorney in House Counsel at Ohio State? And what can we do to make life a little bit better in society? And so I took a big leap to try to become to think about AI for me. How can I help other women so that the world that is created for my daughters is different than the world we live in today? So I started this role in August of last year, and so I'm fairly new at it, but I'm very excited about where we're going. So we're going to talk today about who the Matriots are. Can you talk to me a little bit about redistricting was one of the questions. Yes, I can, or at least our perspective on redistricting. And then there was also a question that was posed to me as to who brought a list of those to the extent I know them, right? There are some that will fall off of the list. There were some who maybe will add on to the list, but what we have been able to find from your local boards of election of individuals who are running in your area. I'm a pretty relaxed person most of the time, so if you have questions, feel free to send those my way as we're talking. I'm happy to have this be a conversation, so long as Sue can also be part of it. Can you still see her? Yes, I can still see her. So that people who are on Zoom can still be part of our discussion. And feel free to interrupt at any time and let me know that you have a question or a comment. I'd like it to be a conversation. So the history of the Matriots. In 2017, we had 6 of our women who went to the Women's March in Washington, D.C. And they came back from the Women's March thinking, as many of us who went to the Women's March, I got to do something. Right? There needs to be more happening in order to change the course of American history. And they sat around a table and they said, okay, what are we going to do? Which one of us is going to run for office? And then they laughed at each other and they said, none of us, because none of us are quite right for it. And they said, what else can we do? So they launched some statewide research about what are some of the barriers that exist for women entering into the political atmosphere. And they found that one of the largest hurdles for women that is distinct from men is how they raise money and how much money they raise. And they said, can we solve that problem? We have the ability to donate. What if we just donate to a candidate and help her get elected? And they said, what if we instead have a bigger impact creating a political action committee that then will redistribute the money to candidates who are running for office, for women candidates. So they thought, okay, we're going to just start small. We're going to get a few of our friends together to create a PAC or a women's giving circle. And we're going to just try to endorse a few candidates, just see how it goes, raise a little bit of money. And they had a pretty modest goal of about $250,000 they wanted to raise. And they raised $750,000 and convinced 500 of their dearest friends, 509, to come along for the ride. So they realized they were onto something, and the organization has grown since then. And so it's a very new organization, and we're only in our 5th year. We're in our, what I think of as our 2nd endorsement cycle. I like to think of the kind of a 4-year endorsement cycle, starting with the year after the midterms of a presidential year. So I actually think we entered at the right time, because there's kind of fallout from a presidential election. You see how the impact is from a presidential election on local elections, and then we start midterms where we are now. So we're in a beautiful cycle right now, starting again, our 2nd cycle. The goal, the big, hairy, audacious goal, the bag, of the Matriots is to, at the time we started, it was to have 50% of all elected offices be held by women by 2028. Over time, we realized that's a challenge, so we're going to go with 50% of elected offices to be held by women. We did key performance indicator work and realized the number of women who would need to run for office based on the amount who are actually getting elected to office would be so astronomical by 2028 that we need to push the year out. But instead, so we're going to focus on the 50% of having parity, having a representative government that looks like the people. This is, far out there. Having a representative government that looks like your people, and that represents the issues that people care about. Since that time, we've endorsed 322 candidates, and every single endorsement comes with money. So every endorsement that we give, we not only give our name, the use of our brand, and we'll talk about what our values are, a statement and stamp that says we match our values, but also money to every candidate who's running, because we know that's an area for them. Since we started, the General Assembly, the Ohio General Assembly is now 31% women. Most of those women have been endorsed by the Matriots and carry the Matriots forever. So when the organization started in 2017, I was paying attention at my previous job, and I got invited to one of their events, come be a member. And I said, I don't know. Because as soon as I walked in the door, they said, hey, you should run for office. And I said, you don't really actually know me. I could be a crazy person. Perhaps I am. And so I left that thinking, do they ask every woman? Is it every woman, or is it only some women? Do we endorse every single woman? And is that the only characteristic that matters? Over the course of, what was that?
Longitude and
and so I said, I need to know more about who they endorse and how they choose those individuals before I become a member. And around 2019, they got more clear on who they were going to endorse, at least externally. They told us more. And so I joined in 2019 as a member, because they said, what we believe is that, yes, it should be women in office, but they should be women who are working to increase women-friendly policies, women-friendly legislation that will lead to economic empowerment in a state where women can thrive and prosper. And they listed out these 5 values as those that the candidates must show us that they hold when we interview them, when we talk to them. They must show that they're there for economic empowerment of women, that they believe in access to education and how they think we're going to get there. They have to talk about dominion over our own bodies and what their beliefs are in that space. They have to talk about what does equity and independence look like, and how are they going to promote those values in office, and that they will work to create healthy, safe, and prosperous communities for us to raise our families, and for women to be safe in the community as well. So whenever we talk to a candidate, we ask about all 5 of these things. We are nonpartisan, so we'll endorse candidates on either side of the aisle. We have endorsed candidates on either side of the aisle, but they have to show us how these play out in their daily lives and how they intend to use them and rely on them in the work that they're doing. So what we've learned so far, because I feel like so far it is an important point, right? Like we've got a long way to go. Our candidates appreciate the Matriots endorsement for numerous reasons. I had assumed that our candidates appreciated the Matriots endorsement for the money, right? I mean, that's pretty important. It offsets money that they have to raise from individual donors. We know that women, sometimes, even if women raise the same amount as their male counterparts, they often have to have more donors. Individual donors give less to women than they do to their male counterparts, so they have to have more connections. So of course they're going to appreciate the money from us. That helps offset some number of donors that they don't now have to get. But they also say that they appreciate having the Matriots say, we have tested your values, we've sat down with you, we've talked with you about them, and we believe that you will stand behind those values. The way that we interview, the way that candidates come to us is that we scan the state after filing deadlines. We contact every board of elections. We contact the parties, both sides, for every county and say who has applied, who's a woman. We look at all of the county, each individual county's list, and any name that looks remotely female or could be androgynously female, or maybe is Steve, but we think it's maybe a Stevie, like we send them a letter and we say, here's who we are, here's what we're doing. If you align, if you're eligible, feel free to apply for our endorsement. So we send those out. We comb the internet looking for Facebook websites. We ask all of our former candidates, do you know anybody who happens to be running for office? We talk to all of our members. We have about 2,000 members now. We ask them, who do you know who's running for office? Please have them apply. We want to give out our money. And so they apply, and there's a fairly long application process. They do have to check yes or no with regard to each individual value that we list. They have to say, yes, I agree with this value. Here's what I'm going to do or what I have done and with regard to this particular value. Then every candidate that, at least on paper, looks like they put a line gets a 30-minute interview with the Matriots. And we do that regionally. So we have, for you all, we have what's called a Northwest Hive. Our Northwest endorsement hive is all women and men from the Northwest part of Ohio who interview Northwest candidates, because we know that the politics up here are different than the politics in Appalachia, right? It just is. And so we have 5 different hives. We have a Southwest hive, a Northwest hive, Northeast hive, Southeast hive, and a Central Ohio hive that do the individual interviewing for each of our candidates. Yes.
Nancy asked, this is just Ohio.
Yes, this is just Ohio. We would love for there to be Matriots organizations in other places, but this was started for just for Ohio. And one of the reasons I love doing this work here is because, at least what I recall from the Ohio of my youth, was that neighbors could have political differences. You could kind of talk with people about your political differences. You still took them a casserole when they were, not feeling well or they tripped and fell. You watched their kids if they needed to go out, regardless of the political viewpoints. And so I think Ohio has deep down the ability to get back to that space. And so I think the nonpartisan aspect of what we do and the values-based part of what we do is really something that can work in Ohio. So we do the individual endorsements, and the endorsement committee meets and makes a recommendation on whether or not to endorse, and whether or not to, or how much money to give along with that endorsement. There's a steering committee, which is a committee of our board that meets and makes a decision about it and then passes that on to the ultimate board. I have 11 board members on the Matriots PAC, and they vote up or down on every candidate, up and down on every amount. So it's a long process to get endorsed, but the League of Women Voters knows about long processes, so I don't have to belabor that point with you all. And then our candidates are announced as endorsed candidates. They get to use a Matriots endorsed stamp on their images. They get to send that out as a mailer if they want. They can make graphics for them to be able to use. And we endorse them and give them money. We do both primary races and general elections. So we've learned all of that is very important to our candidates. I've also been really surprised that they appreciate the interview itself. Many of them say this is the first room I've been in today that has felt warm and welcoming. When they get an interview, they said, I feel like I'm among my people. I feel like I'm able to talk about how I really feel about something, and thank you for the space. And so we noticed that our candidates are craving that connection with other women. Our members, so I'm thinking now our members, appreciate the endorsements, of course. And what I found kind of surprising as I've been learning about this job, our members appreciate the endorsements of candidates they had no idea existed, right? So it's almost like an investment portfolio where you kind of, you recognize you're giving to the investment portfolio, and they're going to look at what the best things to invest in are. You may not know that it's actually this small startup over here, but that's where they're going to invest your funds. So we learn, that maybe it's a candidate in Dayton who is really trying to shake things up. Shanice Turner-Sloss, but you may not know about her, and that she is going to make things happen in Ohio, make things happen in Dayton, She actually is, she aligns with a particular party, but they don't support her. And she is trying to shake things up in Dayton. But you may not have known about her. And so our members appreciate the endorsements for the people they didn't know about. And for the people they do know about, like we all know Nan Whaley. We have endorsed Nan Whaley. We've given money to Nan Whaley, and so too have many of our members. So it allows them to expand their commitment that way. Our members appreciate our expertise. We speak on a lot of different issues. We bring in speakers on different issues. We're going to bring in a couple of school board members in a few weeks to talk with us about school transportation issues and how that is being funded or underfunded by the state of Ohio. There are a couple of school districts who brought litigation against the state related to underfunding of school transportation. They're going to come and talk to us about how transportation affects access to education for school districts. And so our members really appreciate that expertise on particular issues affecting our values structure. And then network opportunities, which I've missed. Thank you. You can tell I'm like getting, we have some water. This is great. Take a breath. Networking opportunities. So our Matriots members also appreciate the opportunity to get gather. And I'm excited to get back to that in person, finally, after 2 years. We will have our first in-person happy hour, actually in a week and a half. So on the 27th, we'll be happy. So those are things that our members appreciate. The last thing is that we conduct research currently on what's happening across the state, what's happening with our members, what's happening with our candidates. And we found that our research indicates that our big goal, right, we talked about that we'll have parity in representation, with equal representation. It requires more women running for office, voters understanding the electoral process, which is part of what you all do and part of what we're hoping to do. We'll talk about. Our candidates would require more support networks. They don't know how to get access to important processes or access to the necessary components of an election or of a race. And so we want to make sure that we can break down some of those barriers. And equal representation requires protection of democratic processes and that's where we think about redistricting, right? We think about gerrymandering and how that's not leading to fair representation. So where we're headed. This is what I came in to do. We're going to continue endorsing here in Ohio. We're going to continue amplifying voices that of women who are currently in office, but moving forward, we're also going to be conducting more research. We're going to be trying to figure out, okay, if we've got the monetary barrier, we're working on that. What are the other things that are causing women to either not run for office or once they run for office to not win their election? And on the opposite side, what makes them more successful? And so current kind of early research is telling us perhaps women, when they run in a field race, are more likely to win. That if there are 4 candidates and 2 of them are women, the 2 women are often the top vote getters in that race, right? So what does that tell us about where we should be putting our resources and where women maybe should be running? So early research is showing that. I'd like to know more and to conduct more research in that space. We want to, oh yeah.
What's a field race? I'm sorry to be uninformed.
First of all, don't ever apologize for not
This
knowing
woman
something.
is very informed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Sean,
Repeat the question for the Zoom people.
absolutely. So she asked, what is a field race? And maybe my terminology is not quite right, but a field race to me is a race where there are numerous candidates running for the same office, and there are multiple offices of the same type on the ballot. So oftentimes like a city council race, perhaps, where there are 3 seats open, 7 people running for those seats. The top 2 or 3 people might be oftentimes are women. So we're trying to figure out is that instructive to us? Right, and so head to head, women aren't winning as often as men, but perhaps if you put them in a field race, like a city council or a commissioner race, they seem to be winning more often in that race. So that's what I call a field race.
So why is that?
More research needed. Why is that? And it has played, I thought it was really interesting. It played out very, very well in our races this past year. We endorsed 139 candidates, many of those for city councils across the state. And many of those were field races where our women were incredibly successful. So we had a 61% win rate for our candidates who were 85% out of 100. So how is this happening, right? We need to connect women to resources. When I mentioned early on that I had considered running for office, and I had just happened to be standing in a line at a candidate event. I was going to go canvass. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I was going to go canvass with my oldest, and I'm standing in this line. I'm talking to somebody, and she's really connected in the community. And she said, "You know what? You should run for office." I said, "I'm actually good. Got a lot of stuff going on." And she said, "No, you need to meet this person, and you need to meet this person, and we're going to go to this thing, and it's time for you to file your." You need to make sure that you go and you file this, paper to get the training. It starts tomorrow. Like you have to do all these things. But she knew all the things I had to do. I had no idea. If I had just woken up one day with a fire in my belly and an idea on my heart, but nobody to connect me to that, I would have just continued to be, think about it, but not actually be able to act on it. How do we connect women to those resources? I thought about all my friends who, do I have a friend who would head up my volunteers? Maybe not, right? How do I ask working mothers of children and young children to be my volunteer coordinator or to make my website for free? Or, and so there are these resources available. And so we should be able to connect women candidates with those resources. Did you have a question, Jane?
No, I have a little bit of a technical issue. Oh, real quickly. Darcy, can we turn that camera off on her? They now can't, at home, they can't see her PowerPoint.
Oh.
I told them I'd get it from Emily and send it to them, but I think it's because we have that camera on.
That means she's on that.
Can I, maybe give me 1 second. Let me try something.
But she's not,
Give me one.
I have it on share screen.
You have it on share screen? What if I share my screen?
Oh, you're
Yeah.
supposed to share. You didn't share, you just turned on your.
There we go. Darcy needs to start.
You need to share your screen.
There we go.
Is mine shared?
Now.
Does it say it?
It says you are
Yeah.
screen sharing.
Yes, you are now.
Now it's on there. Maybe it's just at one of the tabs.
Marianne or Sue, can we get a thumbs up if you can see my screen?
They should be able to see it now. It's
They should be able to see it.
Can I hear
see
you?
it here, because they're seeing what I'm seeing.
Can you, oh, there's a thumbs up. Thank
There's
you.
a thumbs up, yeah. My apologies, I am.
There you go.
Yeah.
Minimize this. I don't want to cover my E though. Okay. So what I really want to do is help connect women to these resources and create actually a network of women and men and resources and maybe timelines and toolkit things that are available to women who are running for office to make it simpler. We know that women are doing a lot more of the care providing at home, the unpaid work at home, especially during COVID, and as a result of COVID, our time is stretched very thin. And so how can I and the Matriots make this piece easier and break down that particular barrier? We want to be able to educate voters on government processes and women-centered policies and issues. One example of what we're hoping to do in the next year or so is to take the job descriptions, create job descriptions for Ohio for these for the different roles that are happening across the state. I'm gonna run for auditor, not me. This is an example. Say I'm going to run for auditor. What does the auditor state?
Up on my website shortly.
What was that?
I'm having the definition of state rep up on my
Yes.
website.
So we can link to your website and say, this is what what does a day in the life of a state rep look like? And why is it important to your daily life, right? A lot of people say, well, politics, we were just talking about this. Politics are kind of not important in my daily life, that it's something that's happening down in Columbus, or it's, you know, it's not interesting to me. It is so impactful for, if you think about your access to voting, to the voting booth, right? That is controlled by elected officials. And so which elected officials control that access and how you get there, how you're able to vote? Are you allowed to vote from home or not? That's controlled by elected officials, which ones and how you get there. Who controls the access to fair housing? And, you know, so what can we do to educate voters on those roles that are impactful in their lives? And that will also help women candidates understand, okay, I have a problem. I'm frustrated. A lot of my women have a why, right? They have something that caused them to want to run. And then how do they translate their why into which role makes the most sense for them? You know what a school board does, maybe, but do you really know what a county clerk does? Perhaps not. So educating voters and women on those roles that are available for them. And then advocating on women's.
So a question
Yes.
about that. So would an auditor role in one county necessarily be the same as in another county?
Not necessarily, but we can try to give, for the state of Ohio, generally what we see as the roles we've seen. So there are another couple of websites that do across the United States. This is generally what these roles do. But if we could make it at least Ohio centric, I think it would be really helpful for the people of Ohio to hear. Here's what, you know, under state statute is designated as the role for this job in the state.
Excuse me, could you repeat any question that?
Oh, sorry. So sorry. The question was, would it be, is every county the same with regard to each of the different roles? And the answer is not quite, because you know you'll implement it the way that you your county sort of sees fit, and there may be local rules around it. So an example is this is an example that we have multiple different types of city council structures. So there are strong mayor systems, there are weak mayor systems, there are no mayor systems where it's all city council, there's strong city manager systems. So all the city councils aren't quite the same as to what they do. But if we can at least say, here's generally what a city council role would look like and how you would be able to make a difference in that role, I think that at least starts to help women and men, but women say, I can identify myself in this role. My oldest, again, she's my most politically active at 12, right? I was sitting down with all of them, with all of my kids, and explaining that we were endorsing Nan Whaley for governor, and I was very excited about it. And I told them at dinner, and I said, okay, so which of you wants to run for governor, right? And they blinked at me. They blinked at me, and my 7-year-old said, absolutely not. And my 9-year-old at the time, now 10, said, do I get to live in the big house? Like, I like the house. and my 12-year-old, she turned 12 today, she said, no, because only boys can be governor. And I said, and then she said, also, there are no governors with curly hair like mine. And so I can't be a governor.
Oh.
And I held on to things. And she's actually right. There's never been an African-American woman who's governor of any state. But, we had a long conversation about, well, this is why I do what I do. This is why you help me do what I do. And this is why so many women and men around the state are trying to make a difference in this space. And so to me, it is so important to normalize candidacy for our children. It's important to normalize candidacy for women, and then to normalize elected office. If we can advocate for women's centered policies and legislation, we can try to push forward some of this normalization as well. So that's the direction the Matriots are headed. We have historically just been endorsing. So kind of ancillarily doing these other things. We've created a 501c3 to start doing, a philanthropic organization to start doing more of these activities. So let me stop there for a second before I get to 2022 issues and considerations that are on my mind, and you gave me a stage so I can ruminate. What are you thinking? What can I answer for you?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you endorsed Ann Whaley.
Yes.
Now, there is a woman who is local running for against Ann Whaley for that party's endorsement.
Yes.
Would you endorse two women who are running for the same seat?
A great question. So the question was, will we endorse two women running for the same seat? To answer your actual question, yes, and we have before. They hold our values. We will endorse both women. We have chosen between two candidates before because one obviously showed that they supported our values more than the other. We have endorsed giving different amounts in the same race before. All that's public, all of our PAC filings are public, so you can run that. So to me, our goal, right, when we think about what is the mission of the Matriots and the goal of the Matriots, is to increase representation, women representation in office. And if both of them are holding our values, whichever one wins, I'm not picking a winner, I'm picking somebody who's going to carry the values into office. Your example for lieutenant governor, so I want to specifically comment on that. We have endorsed both Cheryl Stevens and Teresa Fetter before, previously in races previous elections where they were running for something. We chose not to endorse in the lieutenant governor race. We endorsed gubernatorially, not lieutenant governor, because we recognize that it's a ticket where they share the money, and it's really the money going to the governor. So we did not endorse lieutenant governors. We only endorsed gubernatorial candidates this year. We endorsed in every race for the most part, from municipal government, local government, all the way up through statewide races, with the exception of lieutenant governor and lower judicial races than Supreme Court justice. So we will endorse in the Supreme Court justice race if we have women who apply who meet our values. Won't endorse in that race, but lower judicial races are harder because of the judicial canons that govern what judges can and can't do. They can't tell us how they're going to come out on a particular issue, so it requires us to go through their jurisprudence and determine how it looks like they might, in addition to having a conversation with them, but we have to evaluate their jurisprudence. It takes a lot of time. So we only do Supreme Court races. So
I have a question.
sure.
On your 5 criteria, I believe it was 5, the middle one had to do with women's health issues. And where does abortion fit into that?
So the last one is actually about women's health. It's about safe, healthy, and prosperous communities in which to raise our families.
Yes.
The third one is specifically about dominion over our own bodies.
Yes.
And so just a little bit of a distinction. So we ask every candidate to talk about, are they pro-choice? Are they not? We ask every candidate, do you expect an endorsement by Ohio Right to Life? Because we find that they just give it out for free, even if you don't ask for it. So we ask about whether you're seeking that endorsement and whether you expect to get it. And really what we want to know from our candidates is, are you going to ensure that legislation that you're putting forward and promoting is women-centered and women-friendly, right? And the way that our group came to the determination of it should be dominion over our bodies and not just pro-choice or pro-life. Yeah. It is talk to us about your personal choices, and then tell us a little bit about in the heat of the moment what you would decide if you were pressed in writing policy and legislation. And then the thing that I do is I follow up with our candidates. So if I have a candidate who I say, you know what, it's looking a little stressful on in this space for me. I'll follow up and I'll say, what are you feeling about, some of the values? Do you feel challenged on these values? How have you voted in the past? My members are calling me about some of your previous votes. Talk to me about whether we still see eye to eye on the values. And I think this allows us to have a conversation with individual candidates. And this is probably the most divisive of the issues to many of our bodies. And talk to me about how we can be the most supportive of you in ensuring that this particular value is playing out. But that is probably the hardest one for our Republican candidates to get behind and to say out loud. Though maybe actually they've all kind of become divisive over time, but that one is more challenging.
Where do you get your money? The money that you give to these candidates, does that come from your members or?
Yes, it is. It is not that I found a treasure chest in the middle of an island somewhere. Where do we get money for our members was the question, or for the candidates? And it is donations, contributions, political contributions from our members. So we talked about, we have 2,000 members. All of our members give to the organization, and we're able to set aside a portion of our budget to be able to give to contributions for our candidates. Okay, so the couple of issues that you wanted me to talk about, actually there's really only one, I think, redistricting. But it's a couple of different components on redistricting. So you are actually way more well-versed in redistricting probably than I am. So to the extent I say something wrong or I look astray, please join in and redirect me. So we know that redrawing happens every 10 years, the redrawing of the lines. The Ohio Redistricting Commission is charged under the new 2015, under the 2015 changes and 2018 changes to the Ohio Constitution, that this redistricting commission, bipartisan, is charged with redrawing the district lines based on census data. And they are meant to be a really thoughtful bipartisan committee, which is not necessarily panning out. They're thoughtful, they're just thoughtful on the wrong kind of thinking. So the commission includes 7 elected officials, and then I have on the right-hand side the latest map for the Senate districts, which is now currently in litigation, as you know. There have been multiple maps approved through the commission, mostly along party lines. This last map for the House and Senate districts was actually not on party lines, right? We had one individual who thought it was too Democrat leaning, so he voted against it, but otherwise it was passed through along party lines. The Supreme Court has original jurisdiction, and here's the challenges to the maps, and that's where they all are living right now, sitting with Supreme Court clerks and probably lots of piles of paper. The US congressional maps were rejected as unconstitutional, and all of the Ohio General Assembly maps up to now have been rejected as unconstitutional. All of the maps, so there's 2 sets of maps, 3 maps in total are currently involved in litigation. So here I've got the very pretty, yeah, it's still gerrymandered, the map on the right-hand side of the House districts. That's the CUP plan that was approved through the commission on March 20th. It's tiny, can you see it? I can send it to you too if you're interested. I thought it was just really, it's pretty, but so, oh, I went the wrong direction. Which one?
The yellow district that.
Right here?
Yeah, no, the next one.
The
over,
next one,
that
this guy?
I live on the far end of that one. We're probably at the other end of it right now.
So we're close to pink, right?
Yes,
We're close to
Yeah,
the pink
probably.
on the edge of the,
How far was this?
to the Fulton County line.
Oh,
and I live down here in one of these numbers that has been shifting and shifting and shifting and putting people in and out, one street over, one street back. One of the things that has been happening with the redistricting is that for the House maps and the Senate maps, for our candidates, they have filed they've set forth all of their petitions. They are really thoughtful and they follow all of the deadlines, and then the shifting lines have changed who they're running against, where they're running, and who they'll represent. And so we have applications that come in where people say, can you endorse me? And we say, okay, tell us about your opponent. And they're like, I have an uncontested primary. And then a new map comes up and they're like, so remember when I told you I had an uncontested primary? I have a primary opponent and they're this person. And then the next map will come out and they'll say, remember how I told you I had a primary and I was contested and it was this person? I don't have a primary anymore. So we are trying to be as flexible as we can be. We know that women need money early to get their mailers out, early to be able to engage with voters, early to buy up media spots before a party buys all of them up, early. And so it's really challenging when we're like, will you be on the ballot? We have some who say, well, if I have a primary opponent, that person is going to be this person and they are much more likely to win than I am, so I'm going to drop out if that's my primary opponent. And so we're like, well, if you drop out, what happens to the investment that we made in your campaign? So it is, redistricting is really touching on our candidates in unique and specific ways. We know that on March 23rd, Franklin Rose issued an order that the following races would be on the May primary. All while managing, it's really fascinating, he's managing to say like, this is totally not my fault. As a member of the redistricting commission, right? It's like, I don't know how this happened, but here we are. So U.S. congressional races, statewide races, county, local races, ballot initiatives, and local issues will all be on the May 3rd primary. There will be another primary sometime between May and August 2nd. Federal guidelines tell us that it must happen by August 2nd in order to have the right amount of time before it for federal processes. This is a disadvantage for a number of reasons. One is that the congressional maps are still in a very contested space. So we're going to be voting on the most recently submitted and approved congressional maps. So US district maps for the House. We'll be using those as a basis, but they may be unconstitutional. And I honestly, I've thought a lot about this. I don't know what the ramification of that is. If you elect primary candidates on an unconstitutional map. So the court advised that that the state should move the date for the primary. The state was like, no. And that date is set by the Ohio General Assembly, which is of, as you know, the same party that the commission is. So we wait to see this map is the map of the approved House congressional districts. Obviously, the senators are running for the whole state, so there's no map for them. But the US House congressional map looks currently like this, which my own district is this kind of light purple lavender color, and has severely changed since the special election that elected Mike Carey to this seat in just November. So we had somebody who was elected to a seat here. I live right along the side, almost in this red here. And the seat used to go just about as far west as this is, and then all the way down here into like Benton County.
Which one is Jim Jordan's?
So he used to be the duck, right?
It's that orange.
So he was here-ish. And I know this because my husband and I dressed up as a happy couple of gerrymandered districts for Halloween. Share the image with you, it's cute. But I don't know where exactly he lives.
He lives in Urbana or Bell Fountain or something.
So Bell Fountain would be over here.
He lives in Urbana, I think. Which
And
is
so
probably
it
Urbana
went
County.
this direction, so it looks like it would be cut up multiple ways. And so maybe he would end up in this blue.
Who's in the orange?
It's like old Gladys district, the orange.
Lada
maybe.
is what I'm hearing.
Lada.
The question is, who's in the orange?
Marcy is the gray.
And yes, Marcy Captor was that here.
Bob Latta would be the orange.
And Jim Jordan must be the blue.
Or Jim Jordan.
Mhm. So a lot of good work to do here. So one of the things that I've been focused on recently, I wrote a guest column for our local paper called the Columbus Dispatch on the redistricting delays and how they disproportionately impact women. They impact women candidates and they impact women voters. And my rationale here is that, again, we talked about women are less likely to self-fund their own campaigns. Their individual donors give less, which means they need more individual donors in order to make sure that they have as much money as their male counterparts to run. That takes time. Engaging with the donor takes time. It's a gift. I love doing it. They love doing it, but each one requires an increased amount of time. And so our women candidates need every minute that they possibly can have. And for some of them, we've completely compressed the amount of time they have. They now have just until May 3rd, where they learned of that on March 28th or March 23rd. We also have women who have no idea who they're running against and whether they're running. And so do I go talk to my neighbor across the street and say, I'm running for this office, and you don't know whether you're going to represent that person across the street or not. And that is a very real challenge in Columbus, where I live. I am seeing literally across the street, it's too. The individual donor type, gerrymandering benefits incumbents. And most of the incumbents are overwhelmingly male. My column talks about the fact that 70% of the individuals in the Ohio General Assembly are men. 100% of our elected statewide executive office holders are men. And so these individuals, incumbents, are benefiting from the gerrymandering and by design, and therefore disadvantaging my women candidates. Yes.
What about minority folks?
Same problem.
Minority men, they get discriminated against
Absolutely.
quite badly in a lot of the districts, depending on the gerrymander.
Absolutely. Yep. I probably should have said in the article, like, this is not to the exclusion of all the other people who are disproportionate, who are unfortunately impacted. But yes, minority men and minority women. Minority women is more where my focus is, right? Probably because, as you know, my focus is on women. But minority women raise far less money than women who are not minority women raise. So they would be even more disadvantaged by this particular type of gerrymandering. They're way less likely to be incumbents. They have way less contacts and excuse me, communities. Excuse me. There's a study. I'm trying to remember who put the study together. It is a study by the Barbara Lee Foundation, specifically on incumbents, but on the differences for women in their incumbent races, for women, white women, women of color, and Hispanic women specifically, as to how to, so some of the disproportionate impact depending on your race, and then how to overcome that is what the Barbara Lee Foundation is telling us. Here's how you try to engage with particular donor groups, or here's how you try to change your messaging depending on which group you might fit into.
One of the minority women that I did pretty well, was up in the Cleveland area, and that was a case of a lot of discrimination going on there too.
It's a challenge. It's a challenging race up in Northeast Ohio, and state challenge. The other group that it disproportionately impacts, I think, are women voters. And we talked a little bit about how women, right now, our time is stretched thin because we have so many other paid and unpaid things that are on our plate to do. We are the primary caregivers. We're also the primary consumers in the state. And so with 52% of the eligible voters being women, I think, this is a moment in time where we have to make sure that we focus on the impact of redistricting on women. So I'm hearing that I am getting the big cane, that it is time. So thank you so much for having me here to speak. The last 3 slides are just those individuals who are running here in your area, regardless of party, who are women. So you'll have this to be able to look at. Yeah. Thank
Can
you
you
so much.
stop sharing that?
I can stop
Please,
sharing.
thank you.
Yeah. There you go. Oh,
Goodbye.
oh, yeah. Hang on. Oops, 1 second.
So thank you so much.
Thank
Here is
you.
a copy of the Constitution.
Thank you very much. I have a pocket constitution.
It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the meeting. And how do we join?
Well, and thank you again, Emily, that was really informative. And thank you for joining us. This is our last Topical Thursday for the year. We will be back in September, but don't forget our general meeting this coming Monday evening, Zoom only, at 7 o'clock, the 18th, and our annual meeting brunch, May 21st. Doors will open at 9 a.m. It's a brunch, and the meeting starts at 9:30. But you'll be getting information on that. Good to see you all. Take care. Stop recording.